Yes, I'm ready for the challenge. Try to solve your own issue, try to solve your own problem. Now we have Porsche coming here, able to grow a very strong network of engineers. I will probably be more afraid of taking a second risk. In Mexico, Guadalajara, raising $2,000, it was very difficult.
Hey everyone, this is Julian from the Grupo Podcast, co-founder of Grupo, a community who's focused on the professional development and networking of internet builders across the world. Right now, our community is heavily distributed in Latin America, but we're accessible globally. Right now, we have the pleasure of interviewing Martin Moscosa. The most interesting man in the world had a son who was a startup founder. This would be the guy. Martin's lived in so many different countries, has built businesses not only in the US, but Mexico, worldwide. He spent some time in Asia as well. Such a wealth of experience, such a wealth of knowledge in the different types of ways to build companies, but overall has seen the common themes for successful companies. He has some insights on global work, where that's going, the increase of investment and talent in places like Mexico and South America. He's a current startup advisor. He helps companies and founders really achieve product market fit and creates the growth strategies to help them become successful and culture to really achieve long-term success as an amazing product on an amazing team. So listen to this episode. You'll have a really fun time in learning his background, experience, and what he's been able to do to help startups really excel their careers, as well as he has tips and insights for how you can, if you're someone who's building remotely for an amazing product or amazing team, or a founder building a team for your own product. Martin, thank you so much again, man, for joining me on the podcast today. I'm excited to dive into your background, your experience. I was actually doing a lot of research on you, looking at your background, and what was just absurdly surprising is the fact that you've lived in so many countries before you were even like 15, I think. So it was interesting because I was like, and I'm curious to hear your take. Growing up in those different countries, what was the priorities around education? And obviously, computer science is one thing we kind of lean towards on the show. But overall, what were you seeing as a kid growing up, and the difference of what each country emphasized?
No, that's a great point that a lot of people don't really go and look into it. But growing in all these different places, Argentina, Peru, Chile, England, it's just about learning about a lot of things and not about a lot of the specifics at the same time. So I remember when I was talking back to my friends from primary school, elementary school, when I was in Hermosillo, Sonora, for example, in Mexico, and then talking about, hey, this is the history about Mexico and Porfirio Diaz and Benito Juarez. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm talking about the Incas, and now I'm studying about the Mapuches, and I'm
Yeah.
doing that. So, and then I'll come back and then try to bring the story from like the word story. And I was like, getting all these different points and points of view and cultural
Yeah.
aspects of how you were getting. So it was very interesting to not only learn the facts and the
Yeah.
things, it's more about learning to learn and learn in a different ways that you have. So I was just talking about history, but also about sciences, how
Yeah.
they teach sciences and apply sciences in all these different countries. And I was very fortunate to go to different types of schools, some with laboratory classes, some with
Yeah.
more offices kind of maths or applied maths, etc. So that made my brain to really have to go and adapt to every single situation. So it helped me a lot. But today, the thing that I can appreciate the most is being able to understand different cultures
Yeah.
and really being able to adapt to new environments that you're doing. Because when you transport or take all these to the professional world and as an adult, it's
Hmm.
like any startup is successful if it's able to adapt. Any engineer that I've managed is successful if they're able to adapt from one situation to another situation. Anyone that I've coached, it's the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, we went from seed to Series A. Now we have more people, and etc. etc. It's all about adapting, and I think as a culture, that's what makes us really successful. Again, different other
Yeah.
species, etc. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating because the reason why you were traveling, it was your dad, right? And he was a geologist. And what was that kind of impact in terms of just like having a parent who was very science focused and forward? Did that, I guess, change kind of your habits or form your habits when you were going through education and learning something like computer science? something really regimented? What was that impact like?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that also the thought process and the train of thinking that you have, that your parents pour into you, as I was mentioning, how you learn math, how you learn computer, how you learned about geology or biology, etc., etc. I was able to always abstract myself and try to understand. It was more about understanding rather than learning.
Mm,
So if I was going to learn mathematics, for example, how much is 2 times 2 or 2 times 3,
sure.
it's not about like memorizing. My dad will always go, is like, try to understand. It's a sum of sums. So it's like 2 times 3. Okay, two, two, two. That's it. Okay, that's perfect. Now let's do the same with the fish. Let's do that. And then that took me then to being very curious. He's a geologist. I will go with him to all of the camps. I was in the Andes trying to understand, and he will tell me, he's like, okay, understand where this rock came from Europe, and now it's here in America.
Yeah.
Okay, do you get that? Yes. So now what we can do with this, and trying to hear all these stories. And I was
Yeah.
trying to, and at that time, I was creating all these, asking all these questions and becoming very curious. And he will remember, got us the first computer that we got, and we had that. And my curiosity made me open the computer and not being able to put it back together. So I was like, "Oh, sorry, I just broke the computer." It's like, "Sorry, they're not expensive, right?" Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had to go with the technician, and then I became very good friends with that technician. And then I started to learn about programming. There was
Wow.
HTML at that time, and I remember this guy. He was random guy. Now he's a really good friend. He will come on his bike to my house after we fix the computer. He will teach me how to code, how to program, how to build our initial websites, how to take the computer apart, how you had like RAM and the CPU and all these things. And
Yeah.
it was similar, but at the same time, very different from studying Earth,
Yeah.
where this rock to become. But it's also why you have gold and copper or silver in similar areas, because they have some chemistry that it's aligning. Okay, how you're putting CPU and RAM memory and then a video, and then how that's way more precision, and that allowing you to then build the software is like, oh, okay, it's the same. 2 times 3 is not
Yeah.
2 times 3, is 2 plus 2 plus 2. Computer putting all these things together. So it's having that trained process about curiosity, asking questions and breaking things.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see. It's really also about foundational learning from what I'm getting. It's understanding the components on why things maybe exist or why they're needed in their function. And that kind of creates this deeper understanding and this ability to then be curious because you can have this foundational knowledge and then apply it and kind of do the scientific method with everything that you do. It's interesting is that you learned from a technician, which is amazing because it sounds like I feel like the developer community overall is just always open to sharing, teaching each other, learning, progress, which kind of leads me to my next question, which was I learned that it was school that kind of introduced you to entrepreneurship. Your school actually had an incubator, which not a lot of institutions have, but I'm curious if it wasn't for the school offering that incubator, would you have gone into entrepreneurship and start actually testing the products you were making or the software you were making?
It's a difficult question to answer, like so many years now into that have passed. But I can tell you something. After I founded my first company, I remember talking to my mom, and she pulled out of this uh, drawer of memories, like a little notebook that I wrote when I was 5 years old or something like that. And she was like reading all of the things that I wrote. It's like I wanted to be a computer scientist or programming, and I wanted to be my own boss and have, remember reading, putting something like I want to be have a company like Bill Gates or something like that. Well, I already had in my mind 5 years old that I wanted to have my company. Opportunities when I was 5 years old, which of course I wasn't putting my company at 5 years old, but
Yeah.
my parents thinking about, hey, you're gonna have your own company and build your own ideas and become making profitable out of your passion because there's more people that are actually share that. That was not impossible, but those were crazy thoughts, especially in Mexico,
Yeah.
Latin America, having those ideas like, no, you have to go and work for the big boss. And I even remember not long ago, like when I was studying my master's, uh, I had like a foster father that was, he's been my mentor and now a really good friend, foster father.
Yeah.
And he's a really like a role model in Scotland, and he was
Yeah.
telling me when I was starting to work there, his words is always like, keep your head low, do what you're told, do your work, and go along. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what he taught me, because that is the
Yeah.
school that he has. It was like, I want to ask a question. Why are we doing this? Hey, we have this task. What are we
Sure.
doing? What is the and this mindset is just inside of me. So to your question, would I have founded my first company or a company without having the opportunity of incubating? I think yes, it will probably have taken me more time. What I can tell you probably
Yeah.
is I would have failed for sure, like a lot of entrepreneurs
Mm.
before, and I will probably be more afraid of taking a second risk of
Wow.
funding. I'll be afraid of even suggesting. But now we have so many tools, so many opportunities, so many knowledge around us that it's like, you're gonna fail. Try another thing, pivot, do
Yeah.
something else, adapt, etc., etc. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. One thing that popped into my head was this idea of the incubator and having the resources. It's just so crucial to the success of a lot of founders. But one thing that you just mentioned was having the mindset and having the kind of from your parents, from people around you that kind of piqued that curiosity, molded that. If you don't grow up with that, how do you recommend, in your experience, say a founder kind of molds that mindset for themselves? What have you seen founders who maybe don't come from that, but they kind of have that ability inside. They have that motivation, that urge, but they need to warp that mindset. What would you advise them?
Taking well, first you have to be very honest with yourself. It's like creating the mindset or asking yourself why you want to become an entrepreneur, and that's something that I've learned across the years. Is like, do you want to create an anti-culture, anti-pattern of just being your own boss, or you want to make a change? And because again, the journey is going to be very difficult. It's not going to be an easy. And
Yeah.
what I say is like, if everyone becomes an entrepreneur, there's not going to be partners or founding members, employees that are going to help make these foundations and successful stories. So if you don't have someone without the entrepreneurship mindset to come and work for you, it's gonna be very difficult that you're a one person band trying to solve and do finance, billing, engineering, product management,
Yeah.
people, human resources, etc. It's difficult. You need to bring and connect these talents in order to create that. But now you've covered. Yes, I'm ready for the challenge and the journey, and I'm able to connect. And I understand that it's going to be difficult, but I want to do it. And I don't have the mindset. How do I create this mindset? It's just by, again, knowing that it's going to be difficult, knowing that you're going to fail, and knowing that you're going to do it because the dream that you have, and not so much because you want to create a status quo for the society that you're working. I live in Guadalajara, which is the startup Silicon Valley of Mexico. I've been in San Francisco, Austin, and Hong Kong. And it's always about everyone is now becoming an entrepreneur, and then you're just feeling behind and you just want to be that entrepreneur because everyone's doing that. No, no, no. Try to solve your own issue, try to solve your own problem, your dream, and try to
Yeah.
don't go for I want to be huge because everyone is huge. Otherwise, you're gonna be frustrated. If you start with that,
Yeah.
the mindset will mold itself. And because you're surrounded by all these great people, you're going to learn how your mind reacts
Mhm.
about different scenarios and situations. But yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Yeah. You mentioned incubators a second ago, and discuss what additional or just resources that entrepreneurs, founders have now that you didn't even have access to, yeah, outside of your school. Like as you mentioned, if you had that incubator, if you didn't have that incubator, things would have gone maybe differently. What are the things that founders have now, and how is it different?
You have more contacts now. You have more people who have
Mm.
tried and have done it, and you have more access to resources. Not only economical resources, which nowadays you have more because you have a lot more of venture capital, friends and family, or seed type of investment that you have. In the past, here in Mexico, in Guadalajara, raising $2,000, it was very difficult. It was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you were reading about startups in San Francisco raising 100,000 to a million on seed capital. It's like, how am I going to even compete? Now you can raise that money here. Now you can raise even that more money. Investors are becoming a lot smarter about what they invest because of everything that we've lived, right? So you have to become profitable, not just about growth. You have to have a solution and solvency, et cetera, et cetera. But that's about the economical resources that has shifted through time and through the societies. A lot more
Sure.
investors are investing in Latin America and developing countries, etc., because we see that talent. But the other thing that you have is a lot more opportunities. You have a lot more tools like GitHub, Atlassian, Twilio. A lot of these companies is like, oh yeah, we have a startup program, and we're gonna give you
Yeah.
$500,000 in credits, and then you can use it. Amazon, it's very easy. Just write them an email and explain and how you're gonna use it. Google, the same thing. Microsoft, Oracle, IBM. Now they're giving away a lot of resources that, again, in the past, building on the cloud. We're talking about 10 years ago, a little bit over 10 years ago. Building in the cloud, it wasn't that easy. Now you have all these tech tools that you have. You have AI. I was just talking with a friend. His sister is publishing a book. She's doing that, and she's using ChatGPT to create a whole marketing campaign about how she's gonna advertise and do that, and it's working out for her. And it cost her $20, which was the subscription to ChatGPT 4.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, me and my co-founder talk about it all the time. Just the amount of low code to no code tools that you have access to as a founder. And the rule of thumb is only innovate in the one thing that you're good at or your product solves your problem. Don't innovate in anything else. And a lot of founders, they'll try to use these different tools, but nowadays it's so easy to create a product management Trello board on different applications, create integrations with Zapier and Airtable and with mini extensions. There's so many things in addition to what you have available to you. You mentioned competition though, between and kind of thinking about, or founders thinking about the funding that's going on in the US versus and comparing it to the funding that's going on locally. I didn't realize, do they really pay attention to that? And why is that? You would think that they'd have different markets that they're targeting, or is it just the overall, I guess, competition? I'm so curious. I didn't realize that there was such this.
Regarding the competition, regarding the investment, going here versus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now you can do twice, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times more, as much that you can do here in Latin America, Mexico, Peru, Argentina, Chile. That what you can do in the States. The cost of living, the cost of hiring, the cost of development, it's very high in the US and Europe. And now Latin America is becoming very attractive because of that, and because we're breaking the borders, so you can create a lot more talent. You see a lot of nationalities now coming to Mexico, to South America, and you're seeing a lot more gentrification as well as that. So why is it? It's because you don't get cheap talent in South America or Latin America. You get very good talent, quality talent, at a more affordable price. Will this last forever? We're a developing society, so I can tell you now, rent prices for real estate is going high, and that's thanks to companies in Guadalajara and Valley. We had Wiseline, we had Luxoft. Now we have Porsche coming here and creating the tech hub here in Guadalajara. So you can only tell, okay, they're bringing more competition. The talent is the same. We're creating more, and there's a lot of synergy between the government and the universities and the private institutions to keep creating and bringing these talents. And this is what is creating such a healthy competition in our society. I'm talking Guadalajara because I'm here, but I can also talk about Mexico City, Guanajuato, Puerto Vallarta, that are developing a lot into those areas as well in technology.
Yeah. And in regards to kind of the development of different technology, what's been exciting about the founders that have becoming or building now, and that what are the problems that they're solving? What's interesting about the solutions that you are particularly excited about? Because you've had this experience dealing with startups globally. What have you seen that's very unique to Guadalajara and exciting for the future?
I love that question because, and again, I'm probably going to expand on my answer more than necessary. But 10 years ago, a lot of the successful stories were ideas that were successful in the US or Europe or Asia, and we're just replicating the same solution and same business into a local market, and they were becoming huge. But now we're innovating, and we're creating a lot of new things happening from Guadalajara. So you're creating a lot of talent. Again, Guadalajara, we're land of tequila, and there's a lot of technology developing tequila, but we're exporting more software and more technology than we are exporting tequila. This is Jalisco I'm talking about.
Wow. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's a lot, but also about solution and innovation. We're talking about AI that we're building, and we're doing a lot of computer vision and graphics. There's a huge industry for that segment. Talent and creativity, I guess, and this is a really wild assumption because of Guillermo del Toro is from Guadalajara, and then we have Ciudad
Yeah.
Capital, and we have a lot of gaming companies. So we have a lot of talent around, a lot of new startups about how do we develop the creative business, the media. We have a company that I coach, it's called Scouter, and that is just breaking the market at the moment, which is helping a lot of content creators, a lot of indie local bands, and even a lot of private people to create experiences, or companies to live experiences in the way that they're
Uh,
just giving you the location and the ability to build that as from the palm from your hand, and what you try to do.
yeah. Being that you see and coach so many founders and have such a wide experience, what are the characteristics that lead that you can visually see, or whether it's you pull down or kind of uncover the machine of a successful company? What are those components that they have that separate themselves from other companies who maybe have fires every day?
They're always hungry. They're always like, what's next? And they're always like 5,000 miles per hour. Especially the founder has this hunger of doing something. What's if I'm doing something now, I'm already too late, so I have to do two things tomorrow and three things the day after, because we have to be this sense of urgency from the founding teams. It's critical, but the ability to also create a buffer to the team and keep their team happy so they can bring. It's not a team of workers that are doing what the founder is telling. Is having this mindset and sharing that
Yeah.
as a waterfall to the team, and by being in an inspiration to this founding team, so they also develop these sentiments and work fast, not because the boss is telling you, but because you understand how and why we're moving. That's crucial. The other thing, and it's very
Yeah.
related, is founders that are very people oriented, that really care about their employees. That's crucial. Again, one of the things that I saw 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I had a lot of founders that I was coaching. It was like, oh, again, talking about cheap. It's like, oh, I'm just going to pay them the minimum salary and something on the outside. I'm not going to pay their insurance. And I'm just going to
Nah.
be dodgy about this, and they're going to make it for free. And I'm going to go to the university and get like a lot of insurance and going to do it like that. Nowadays, I see a lot of founders like, no, I'm going to pay them well. They're going to work here. They're going to create a career, and they're going to
Mm,
be making history. And these people, when I talk to these employees, it's like, this is my company. They feel just as much
yeah.
a part of what they're trying to build. So the recipe for me in creating high performing teams is just to reduce the inertia, increase the purpose that you have, the playfulness that you have in your day to day, and to
Yeah.
also be proud of the company you're working. If you reduce, as I mentioned, the inertia, and you reduce any economical stress that you have, is like, how I'm going to pay my bills. Reduce both of those things, increase the playfulness, and give them a purpose to work. They're going to take you to the moon.
Yeah. There was something you read recently that was talking about somebody had mentioned to you to build a company not based on vision but dream, or something. I'm paraphrasing, and somebody bestowed that upon you. Now, I was thinking about that because vision is obviously what people, I mean, at length talk about the vision of their company and the mission. What's different between that and the dream, and why is the dream, in your opinion, so much more powerful and compelling for your team?
If you're true about your dream, it's difficult. It's more difficult to break a dream. A
Mm,
vision, you can get afraid. You can see the risk and try to
mm,
pivot real fast without trying to go to the longer goal that you have. A dream, you understand, and you are prepared to take a lot of hits and
yeah,
punches in order to get there. It can be a synonym of being more not smart, and
yeah,
just trying to be silly about like, hey, I'm just gonna be doing the same thing over and over again. Like Einstein said, like, you're only gonna be crazy if you keep repeating the same errors. I'm not saying you have to be that,
yeah,
but if you go around a dream, your values and your core and your mission is going to be a lot stronger, a lot more fundamentally
yeah.
than the vision. The vision is something that, at least in my experience, a lot of incubators, a lot of teachers will tell you, you have to write your vision. And nowadays, I'm sure a lot of people will just go to ChatGPT and tell them two, three things,
Yeah.
and there's a vision, a dream that
Yeah.
you believe on. And it's very difficult
Personal.
to change beliefs in people if they're really rooted to the cause. So that's why I believe that.
Yeah. Changing beliefs, man. Somebody told me when I was younger, it's funny. It was one of those videos on YouTube. It's like things I wish I knew at 20 that I know at 30. And one of them was don't argue people's philosophies because they have them as deep rooted beliefs. And when you can align, if there's open discussion, it's different. But it's like if that core belief is so strong, you can see how it impacts a lot of actions and activities and things like that. One thing I'm so curious about, seeing that you've seen both sides of the coin, you've lived in these other locations. My family's from Jalisco, from Guadalajara area. We're close, but not too close. San Antonio Matute, shout out to the Tanchero. But, in regards to like keeping and maintaining culture and now this whole collective internet culture, how does that bridge, I guess, not only South Americans, but people on remote teams worldwide? How is the change in internet culture and how is that impacting the connectivity between people who are working in Mexico versus the US and other places?
It's a really good question, and it's something I wrote my dissertation about because different cultures. Let's not even go about working remotely where you can work on different areas, but working with different cultures it's very challenging. If you're working on different geographical zones with different backgrounds, it's difficult. There's not one recipe that fits for all. You have to again learn how to adapt, and the manager has to be very open-minded. The founders have to be very open-minded. You asked me a minute ago, what do I see in the recipe for founding members and how they become successful? I kept saying they inspire, but one thing is to inspire, and the other thing is to talking about dreams and beliefs is trying to make sure that I embed my belief and you're gonna gonna do that. No, because that's not respecting other people's beliefs in core missions. If you inspire, you can be respectful about what they believe and that you can work together about working towards the same goal, and that's working. So if you understand that with the cultural backgrounds, it's very different. I worked and I managed and I led teams where I have people from Eastern Europe and Latin America.
Yes.
It's so different how you have to go and ask about things and questions. I remember in Mexico, it's a lot about hey Julian, can I ask you a favor? It's like, hey, can you go and do this?
Sure.
And he's like, sure. So you're doing me a favor. I remember doing that with some engineers that I had in Eastern Europe. I was like, hey, can I ask you a favor? Do it. And they were like, no. It's like, no, it's more about doing it. It's like, and I learned that you have to be a little bit more direct about
Pointed, direct, yeah.
about the question or the ask that you're doing. And the same thing when you're asking that no. A lot of people and managers that I coach, is like, oh, this guy is rude. He's like telling me, he's like, no, he's telling me no. It's fine. It's just a no. And here is like, and you'll find a lot of jokes about Latin America, Mexico. It's like, hey, do you want to go to a movie? It's like, well, yeah, let me see. I'll tell you in the afternoon, but I think I have something, but I'll just let you know. It's like, okay. Sometimes it's better if you just like, no, okay.
So yeah. It's the cultural differences is just so funny, and we work with a lot of Brazilians in our community, and they were telling me the same phenomenon, and which is there's so many pleasantries to finally getting to your point that sometimes it takes longer than you hope. But if you're a founder and it seems kind of daunting. You're hiring from different teams. You want to make sure people get along and actually execute, and also have fulfillment because that's going to lead to them staying long term. How do you set up a environment? You talked about inspiration, but thinking more mechanic day to day, whether it's stand-ups or meetings on cultural vision. As a founder, do you set up the environment so that you can kind of cut through the cultural differences to kind of create this ecosystem at work, which is like, here's where we work. This is how we communicate here. However you do it outside is your choice, but this is how we set it up here. So there's no confusion or miscommunications. How do you do that?
It's difficult, and some of the companies that I admire the most that they're solving that issue is funny enough, they're creating their own culture and they're being very transparent about this is our company culture. We respect what you have, what you bring in, but the company culture is about you set your own rules, and everyone that you invite to work with you have to make sure that they're cultural compatible to the company's culture. Not so much you as a founder or you as a colleague or manager. Is more about the company culture that you're doing. And a lot of the companies that I work and I help grow, part of the recruitment process will start or end with a company culture fit in kind of interview. And a lot of these times will be with the founders of the company interviewing you. It's like, how do you behave? And it's not about anything technical. You had plenty of interviews to look at that. It's like, are you going to be a cultural fit into what we're doing?
Mm,
Are you going to be able to respect our culture as a company? Not my culture as a founder, not my culture as a manager, or your culture as an individual contributor, is our culture as a company. And it's very
yeah.
clear about what we believe as a company, and it's very transparent. When companies grow, then you're starting to have a lot of layers between one level and the other different levels, and that's when it becomes more complicated. But if we're talking about startup,
Yeah.
a lot of the times you're 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 employees. It's still manageable to keep a very
Yeah.
transparent sense of community and creating this culture. Over 200, it becomes very challenging, not impossible, but it is indeed very challenging.
Yeah, yeah. I would always say, and I think a lot of founders would agree. In times where you can't maybe answer the question for your employees and they need to act independently. Like, how are they going to act? And what guidelines do they have? And that's where a lot of that culture, values, and those things you said, those foundational pieces early, then they lead to outcomes where you're not like, oh my God, why would you do that? And it's okay if it's customer first, and it's customer first, and you're like, okay, well, we'll figure it out from there. But the culture really sets up that expectation. Another thing you mentioned that was particularly interesting was about building teams. And why is it more challenging now than ever to hire really good people that you can invest time in? Because you see a lot of founders hiring people part-time, maybe contracting them, then full-time permanents. I know a lot of the developers in our community have that experience. But from the founder side, you have to see the opposite. It is hard to just invest in somebody, and when you have so much other worry, and how do you do that now, and why is it so much harder now to hire the right people?
Because it's becoming very competitive, and you have a lot of
Yeah.
great projects working together, and you want to be in all of these different places. But at the same time, and one of the things I feel very lucky is I've been able to grow a very strong network of engineer people, human resources, and other careers and background that they're doing, so they can put them together. But why is it becoming challenging for the founders? And the fact that I've been able to introduce a lot of these to a lot of successful company, and I can tell you that it's also the lack of knowledge of what you want. It's not always you know what you want, and we're talking is like you have to make sure that you bring people that are compatible to your company's culture. They have to be cultural fit to what you're preaching, right? But a lot of the time it's like, yeah, I want something, so an engineer, I want like a staff engineer who is very cheap, that also can adapt to my company and is going to be committed to my company. And if Amazon comes and offers them money, they're not going to leave, because it's like you're looking for a
Who are you
new.
hiring?
Exactly. If they want to is just maintain the website. It's like, well, no, it's you have
Yeah.
to say what are you looking, and then you create that and you nurture a lot of the requirements that you're doing. They're going to grow with you, or they're going to help you
Yeah.
grow. You have the resources, you have the roof for them to continue developing. A lot of the founders have to be selfish when they're becoming and they're building a company. But when you're building teams, you shouldn't be as selfish. You also have to think about the people that you're bringing, and if you continue to raise the roof, they're going to be thankful because they're continuing to learn, regardless if they're working with you or at Amazon or Tesla or some big company that is going to put a big logo on the back. No, they're growing with you and they're helping you build their business, and that's what you're doing. But you
Yeah.
and you get to this mutual agreement on what you're doing. So I think I truly believe that's why it's complicated for people to get the right talents.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned network and how impactful that was. And in not only finding founders resources or finding yourself resources, or I'm sure funding and things like that. Networking comes so unnatural to a lot of people. And I argue it's even harder now than ever because people are moving away from cities into more affordable areas, more space for their families, and kind of trying to find this balance. Where are the places people should start networking online? And also, how do you go about it to maintain something that's actually growing and not necessarily there when all of a sudden you need a job change or you need an engineer for an MVP that your seed fund seed investors want to see. How do you do that now online?
It's difficult, as you say. Now it's online. Before COVID, there was a lot of events going on here, and I remember being a person who was at all of the events, and people would recognize me, and I'll go. And now online events, as you say, I have people living in smaller towns, and you have to get there. So the only thing that I continue to do before COVID, when we had these events, and that I continue to do, and it helps me to keep a healthy, growing network, is one of the core values that I have is to help others and to make friends instead of
Mm,
contacts. So it goes with that selfishness that I was telling you, is not being selfish. Is if I'm gonna meet you, Julian, and you need help, I'm gonna help you not because of what you're gonna give me, and I'm gonna engage a conversation not because who you are. It's just we're gonna become friends, and probably you know someone that may have the skills that I know someone who's looking for the skills. It's just connecting this and creating this network. But talking, helping, being there for people, it's important. Maintaining relationship is becoming very difficult, especially when you're physically connected to people. It's easier because you can manage those relationships. Hey, let's go for coffee. Let's go for a craft beer or for lunch, and let's start
yeah.
doing that. Or I'll see you in this event that is happening next week, and you'll meet these people and try to coincidentally maintain the relationship, like at least with a nice hello. Now, online communities, and it's becoming a very dispersed. Like going into LinkedIn or X or Instagram is like, oh, I gave you a like. Hey, Julian, how's it going? Trying to keep that. It's becoming very, very difficult.
Yeah.
You don't always have a topic of conversation to talk with someone and say like, hey, let's talk just for the sake of talking and keeping our conversation open. No, but if you're always helping people, when someone is looking for help, they'll go like, oh, Martin is doing that because he likes to help people, and I know I can go with him, and
Yeah.
I'll introduce to this other person that was looking. So that's what I see. It's don't fake the relationship at the network.
Yeah.
Be honest about, I want to build something because I want to help you or the network that.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day about they were wanting to build a personal brand online and start creating healthier content. And my advice was just like find your comfort zone. Find something that can almost self-generate. And that's almost similar to what you're saying. It's like find some intention that is going to continue to create these valuable conversations, whether it's helping people in any chance you can get or sharing knowledge online consistently. All these different mechanisms is really exciting to be able to kind of uh, connect with people authentically. And actually, thinking about content wise, how have you seen this amazing evolution and revolution really of founders taking advantage of these social content platforms? What have you seen that has been really successful from a growth standpoint now with the ability for founders to get involved in social media and in all these different visible, hard to reach things if you think about it a few years ago?
Yeah, and I can talk very closely. Have a friend, company that I helped before being here at Sunroom Rentals. It's, Felix Lee from 80 Place down Singapore, and he uses his social media very, very strongly to create his personal brand and his company brand in such a strong manner that he is becoming the brand that it's supporting the company behind him, and it's allowing him to
Mm,
go regardless of where he is. And he's in Singapore, he came to Guadalajara, and he was able to use this network to create conference in an easy manner. He went to San Francisco, same thing. So just from whatever he is trying to leverage this lack of geographical barriers and limitations that we have, he was able to take it in a very actionable way on the network or the platform that he was building. I have other people and other friends that even if they're trying to go on a vacation and holiday to France or to Japan, someone in Mexico here, remember they went to Japan and they reach out to the Mexican embassy in Japan. It's like, hey, we're entrepreneurs and we want to meet people. Again, asking for help. Don't be afraid of asking for help, reaching out to
yeah.
people. And the ambassador, just redirecting them to another person, and they got a private tour with a lot of the tech ecosystem in Japan. It's like, what is your
Yeah.
holiday? It's like, yeah, but I wanted to meet people. And now this person knows a lot of people, investors and
Yeah.
founders in Japan that now are talking about coming to Mexico. So this is the type of things that you can take advantage. And when I was going to study to Scotland, I remembered I was looking for my US visa. It's like I was using social media. It's like, hey, I need help because I need to get there fast enough. I got accepted like very
Yeah.
close to the start date, so I had to speed up the process. And I got the government helping me in Mexico to get those letters to go to Europe to in Scotland to study. So asking for help, and again, not knowing who you're gonna be talking to, not because who they are, but because you're really engaged on what you want to do and help or meet, make friends, not contacts. It's the same things on social media,
Yeah.
on real person, or anywhere that you go. Because humans, we have a lot of flaws, but also we're amazing because we like to meet people, help people in the end, and we want to reach
Yeah.
our hand to see how we can help other people grow.
Amazing. Very powerful. Martin, I have a series of rapid fire questions. I call it my FAQs. I'm going to hit you with some and then we'll finish out and close out. But first question coming at you is easy. What are you currently doing right now? What should we be excited about what Martin's working on?
My day-to-day job is leading a group team of engineers working for a US startup, trying to innovate and reinvent the real estate industry in the United States. So helping people and renters to sell fewer and lease faster homes. So I'm leading that, and I'm the engineering part of that, together with two amazing founders. But also on the night when I put myself in my cave, I'm trying to help other founders grow and build and get funding and connect with amazing people.
Yeah. If you weren't working on that, what would you be doing?
Great question. I have a lot of ideas. There's a lot of things, and every day something new comes out. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, I'm very curious. So I'm always trying to try something new and trying to do. But what would I be doing is trying to create better opportunities for everyone in the ecosystem that I'm working at.
What industries, like more recently, are getting you excited in terms of whether it's amount of funding going to them, founders, or interesting, innovative products that are actually seeing traction? What industries are you really excited about and in terms of their growth potential?
HealthTech is something that I see a lot of development going on. Of
Mm.
course, I've worked at a crypto company and fintech company, and I think there's a lot of things going on there. But I'm excited actually about the industries that haven't evolved in a lot of time. So education, real estate. The more that I'm learning and building solutions, the more that I see that there's not a lot of innovation. There hasn't been a lot of innovation. So trying to bring this sort of innovation into this industry that hasn't really transformed, that's exciting for me. And of course, everything that's happening on the
Yeah.
news and other people are working, that's exciting because they're doing. But the fact that we're gonna innovate on things that hasn't evolved for hundreds of years, such as education or real estate, that's exciting to me.
It's so powerful thinking about everything that's, especially in health tech and how also industries are kind of morphing together. AI is playing a part of it in everywhere, and you see so many kind of combinations of technology that are fascinating. What are some early founder piece of advice? I guess early lessons you had that if a founder was asking you, what are some things I should absolutely avoid? What would you tell me?
As an early founder, you don't know it all. So don't try to pretend that you know it all and try to fit the grand scheme. Is don't be afraid of asking questions, asking for help, and asking for favors. So you don't have anything and you have everything at the same time. So those are your two biggest, is your biggest risk and your biggest asset.
Yeah. What are maybe a couple of books, anything that has had any lasting impression to you, and even things that you'd recommend to other founders, people you meet? What books or people have given you some advice that really has lasted the test of time?
Thanks for the feedback. That's one of the founders on Slack, I think, that she was a co-author, and I really like that one. And there's a lot of engineering books that I could recommend, but long lasting. Thanks for the feedback. That's the one that I would recommend to the audience because it's all about how we're talking. We're talking a minute ago about the different cultures and people with different backgrounds. If you know how to talk and be transparent and objective about the way that you're asking or requesting for feedback, the less room for assumptions and the healthy relationship you're going to be creating. And that's going to help you as you're building your team. And even if you already have a team, to strengthen that and to create a culture of we all are able to speak up and to bring and chip in our ideas into better and greater things. So that's a book that I would probably give.
Yeah. A lot of our audience and our community are building the internet across the world. What are 3 skills or habits that they should start learning today that could help accelerate their professional career?
Never stop learning. It's one. I've been in education for a long time, and I think it's important that you never stop learning. Always be humble. I always distrust the most of those who come to me saying, I know it all and I'm an expert. The most knowledgeable people that I've met are the most humble, and the people that tell me that don't know anything. So yeah, always be humble, always keep learning. And the last one is always be hungry. It's like, what's next? What are you going to be working on next?
Yeah.
Knowing that everything is going to change, so you have to learn how to adapt.
Yeah. We're coming to the close of the episode, Martin. Is there any question I didn't ask you that I should have?
I don't know. I like wine, tequila, mezcal. I like cars. I drink a lot of coffee, probably more than I would like to.
What's your tequila and your mezcal of choice? I love both. I'm a big, Jalisco. Come on.
My sister is working at a brand that is very, it's opening their markets in the US, and I think they have something in New York called Don Fulano. So that's really good, and I like
Don
it.
Fulano.
Another one is Ocho. So those are the 2 brands that I like. For mezcal, there's 100 of varieties, but I can tell you I like Espadín and Tobalá, which are the plants that they like smoky kind of mezcal. And probably a question or ask question about my entrepreneurship story is like, I opened a brand of mezcal that is sleeping at the moment, but that all happened because I was at a dinner with someone in San Francisco, and I wanted to become friends. And came asking him, he's like, what are we gonna do? Is like, let's go party in San Francisco. And he was like always very quiet. I don't party, I only like to work. He's like, oh, he's such a bored guy. And then I kept asking, like, what are we gonna do? He's like, no. And then he asked me, like, what do you do? And I was like, what do I do? And I came up with this mezcal brand at the time. It's like and I pitched the whole thing to him. He's like, oh, I love it. He took his business card. He's like, venture capital. He's like, tell me more when you have your company. He's like, oh. So I went back to Oaxaca. I have my mother's family there. He's like, can you introduce me to someone who's doing mezcal? He's like, yeah, I know the president of the Consejo Regulador de Mezcal. He's like, sure, let's meet him. He took me to a lot of mezcal producers, and I created my mezcal brand, and that's it. So again, never be afraid of just screwing up and doing things. It's like, take one.
Sharing ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, man, it's so powerful. One founder told me a long time ago, if you meet a founder who's afraid of telling you about their product or their idea, then just leave them alone, because it's so hard to copy an idea, to stop everything you do and actually to copy what somebody does. And if somebody does, that means it's even that much more powerful for you to go build it. But the sharing of the ideas, people get excited about that, and I think really lead to some amazing relationships and partnerships. Well,
for sure, there's no $1 million idea. There's $1 million execution. And the more that you share your idea, the more feedback you get, and the more that you're gonna adapt to your end customer.
Yeah, we'll call this the $1 million execution. I'll use that as a tagline for this episode. Amazing, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Such a pleasure talking about your background, your experience. I'm sure we could talk at length about so many more topics, but just to have your time and your experience, your expertise, it's been such a pleasure. Last little bit, where can we find you? What are your Instagrams or LinkedIn? Do you have a blog? Tell our audience where we can be a fan and support what you're doing.
Yeah, that'll be great. My name is Martin Moscosa. My last name is Moscosa, so that's not very common. So my handle, my username on Twitter, X, or Instagram, or even my website is Moscosa, Moscosa, and you'll be able to find me just LinkedIn, Instagram, X, or my website.com. So that's where you can find me.
Amazing, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Julian. It's a real pleasure, and all the best to the audience and community that are here. Thank you for spending this, 30 minutes, 40 minutes that we've been talking. I really enjoyed
50.
It's up there. Time did really fly. So I really enjoyed the conversation, the talk, and looking forward for more and hearing and helping anyone from your audience. Always happy to.
Of course.
Thank you.
There you have it. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation, staying with us to learn all of Martin's insights and experiences, anecdotes of impressive knowledge. If you're somebody who values these types of conversations, please follow us online. You can follow our YouTube channel. You can follow us on grupo.dev/podcast and stay up to date with more amazing internet builders, people who are building global teams, building global products. If you're somebody who's interested in that, stay tuned.